The Woman King, we both had the pleasure of watching it. Before I go into what this individual had to say about the movie, what was your take on The Woman King?
I just thought that it was very empowering for Black women to see the strength in us. You can look at it in a personal view of yourself. We were wonderfully made. And I just look at the character. She just had so much poise. She was just so courageous. It's such a wonderful thing to share this with someone that or see it with someone that you have a real great relationship with. It is so insightful. I think you should go check it out.
This writer says, The Woman King is a movie which is set to depict the all-female fighting force of the Dahomey people of West Africa. While the action looks cool and exciting, and I didn't even think about this, I have a serious concern, which just did kind of trouble me a little bit when we were watching it, but I felt like the strength and really the message in it overpowered this, but it is definitely something to talk about, and I think that it would make for great discourse to find out how people actually feel about it. So they says, I have a serious concern about the artistic liberties that are likely to be taken in the film. Historically, the Dahomey were active partners in the European slave trade, with the growth of their power and influence tied to the bullying of rival tribes and the sale of their people. That was the part of the movie that kind of made me uncomfortable, because initially they were a part of the slave trade. They were a part of helping selling their people and selling off slaves that they owned themselves. And it was disheartening to see. I'm glad that they really didn't shine a light on it too much and made the focus on the Dahomey to let us see the rise of this triumphant woman who became a king and all that she had to endure, throughout her lifetime. But it is something to consider and to think about. The writer goes on to say they are not Black, but a student of history who thinks it's important to tell a story based on historical events as historically accurate as possible. And glorifying an African nation, which it was involved in the slave trade, seems like a step backwards. I would love to hear your thoughts. I get where this student is coming from, but again, the writer spotlighted the strength of this nation and how this Woman King came to be. What are your thoughts on that? We really never really touched on that they were a part of initially the European slave trade and the growth of their power and influence.
Well, the history that I know about the slave trade was where the Africans were settled, and they were in Europe, they were in Africa, and they were in America. Looking at this movie here, it just gives more light to how they first started. At the end, if you look at, the history of it, Black people were in survival mode.
So the writer's actually saying, he's highlighting, I don't want to give any spoilers on it, but you remember the tribes that were helping the Europeans obtain slaves. Somebody responded and said maybe the kingdom of Dahomey wasn't the right choice, but at the same time, most Black people are tired of seeing trauma flicks. I don't know why, I understand people from different cultures want to get an understanding, but why should we continue to focus on, the negative? It was, for me, a great movie. Everybody did an incredible job, and it was just a great storyline. I did take note that they were initially a part of the European slave trade, which is unfortunate. It really is. It's a part of our history, and it's very disheartening and unfortunate, but I love that they stayed the course in highlighting the victory of the Dahomey people and the women that stood and fought for that victory. I feel like I've seen a tweet before saying that mothers usually are our first bullies, but I've always conceptualized it in other ways, such as mothers criticizing their daughters' weight, sexuality, and things that are very specific that I could relate to. I kind of feel like she doesn't see herself that way because she's always been there, unlike my father. On paper, she's a great mom, and I'm grateful for that. She looks out for me, and I look out for her. I've always felt some type of resentment towards her, and I could never understand why. I always joke about how she's the only person that sees me as a quiet, boring person because my peers would say otherwise, but now I understand the night and day personality. My mom isn't like this all the time, but I feel like Black mothers sometimes dehumanize their children and are on a power trip just because they are a parent. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think about that? Black mothers being labeled as bullies.
I have never had that experience and pray that my child never share that I have done that to her. I think it's a terrible thing to feel that you have to be afraid of your parents or be bullied by your parents, and whether you are, a child or an adult. I just think that it's like a horrifying situation to be, to be in. And it's not always, people always talk about Black, it's different cultures. It has happened.
Right.
But I do see that type of characteristics and narrative in these little reality shows where these moms are like, it looks like it was bullying. But I don't know if you want to differentiate between bullying or being overly, protective or aggressive. Being bullied in school, that's a crime. That's a strong word that you don't, take lightly.
What the young lady is saying, she's been called out of her name. I would never call my daughter out of her name, or anybody's daughter for that matter, out of her name. She went on to say she felt dehumanized. A lot of times when you're victimized, you don't realize that you're being abused until years later. She's thinking about it now. She's an adult. I feel like if you're dehumanizing your daughter or young person, calling them out of their name, being very negative about their weight, instead of using it as an opportunity to educate them on eating to live and not the other way around, giving her the tools that she needs to be successful. I know a lot of parents, guardians, grandparents that are just set in their ways. Somebody responded and said, I honor and respect your vulnerability in sharing your experience. It's saddening that this is the experience of one too many Black women. While there is some understanding behind it, the power trip thing really blows my mind, because it's like we already got the systems in place to keep us stagnant and even push us back. Why would we not want to uplift our children, encourage them to make choices, encourage them to ask questions, encourage them to speak up? Sometimes, unfortunately, parents treat children the way that they were treated. What are you guys' thoughts on this? Again, I agree with Resiecup in that we shouldn't be singling out one specific race on this. But again, this is a melanin discourse. And so this is what we're talking about. We're getting into it. We have another response here on this. Honestly, it's got to be the generational trauma from slavery to segregation and on, passed from the mother, from her grandmother, and from her grandmother.
Also to the parents live, through their children. So, sometimes they have those high expectations out of them that they wish they did when they were at that age. It's just a lot of pressure on children when they have to go through abusive relationships with their parents. And then it doesn't make it easier when you play fire with fire and not resolve or get help or get some type of treatment for both the parent and the child to come together to be counseled.
Right. The responses were really good. Like, there's a lot of them. I'll forward them to you so you can kind of see what other people's opinion is on the matter.
I just want to touch on the fact that, they've known each other for such a long time. And when they met each other, he had nothing. He was at a bus stop, he had somewhere to go. And from the car ride, it just went into a friendship. From a friendship, it went to, a relationship, and then they had got married, and had children. I believe that, if it wasn't so much for the media, social media, let's just put out there where so many people put their whole life in there. And when you put so many people in your business, it's so much to handle because you have so many opinions about so much stuff with one relationship. People, they don't, when it comes to, negative, or come to, people being exposed about their personal business, a lot of people, some people can't handle that. They fall apart, especially when they know it's something real sacred or real personal. Now
Right.
It's been out in the open. My thing is that even in this, you have people thinking, oh, it's because, he was cheating. Then on the other end, you have people saying that she had stepped out of her marriage. Now you have social media, you have, the reality shows, everything all mixed up in one for people to now know your whole life.
Reese is talking about Tia Mowry and Corey Hardrick. This is the real reality of it. Don't nobody know but them and God. You got to understand, they've been married through most of social media. They actually got married in 2008. So they've been
Okay,
married through most of the social media happenings and whatnot. And that just comes with you being, you being a public figure. It's unfortunate. People are going to have their opinions and things that they're going to say, like you said, what they wouldn't do or what they should do, or their assumptions of what could have happened. And it is unfortunate.
You have people that get married now, and you could have the most beautiful, and then I just want to say this, okay? You could have the most beautiful woman in the world. They talk about as Beyonce, or they talk about, Vanessa Williams, and they talk about Nia Long. Yeah, and they all got cheated on. It's not as like it used to be anymore, where it was so sacred. It was more, it was you and it was your husband, and it was God. But now you got you, your husband, God. Then you have your family, you got his family and his friends, your friend. You have so many influences, and the marriage, it falls apart.
They put all of this emphasis on the actual day, all this emphasis. I'm going to spend all this money and just, it needs to be fabulous. I'm going to spend all this money and pay for all of these people to come. That's what you do. You're paying for all of these people to come. You have to pay for however much the plate costs.
Yep,
you have to
exactly.
pay for the venue. You have to pay people who are bringing in decorations, the person who's officiating. You are paying for people spending all of this money. And I'm not telling, weddings are beautiful, but nobody sits down and plan out where we're going to be in 5 years in this marriage. You're saying these words, you're putting out decrees, saying something that you're going to do. And then when the test comes, because it does, anything that we speak out our mouth, we're going to be tried by it. And better, oh, it's wonderful, we're skipping through the tulips. And worse, that's what really shows the strength of a marriage. It really does. Fire, you're not going to come out the way that you went in there. We talk about that when we're baking or cooking something. I love a nice little slice of cake every now and then, but I'm not going to eat it cake batter out the bowl. It has to go through a process to get to being delicious to me. And so the same way with a marriage, the same way with any type of relationship, is forged that way. And people don't always survive the fires.
I think that we could go the distance. That's what he said when he whispered in my ear at 2 a.m. in the morning. I call him breakfast. I call him breakfast.
What is the cultural reason behind home-cooked food eaten from aluminum foil trays? I'm a Southerner and interested in the ways classic Southern cooking intersects with Black culture. I love grits and greens, and as a result, I belong to a lot of social media groups dedicated to soul food cuisine. I've noticed that a very large number of posts feature food being served in aluminum foil trays and sometimes foam takeout containers, even though the food is home cooked. It's also often cooked in disposable foil containers rather than pans. This question was sent to melaninva@gmail.com from an Appalachian family, and they want to know what's the reason for this cultural difference. For my family, I have a large family, so cooking with the aluminum pans or serving food with the aluminum pans, when you have a large group of people eating in one space, why spend extra time cleaning up dishes when you could just use aluminum foil pans from the Dollar Tree, the Dollar Store, Dollar General, Family Dollar, one of those places? We do it. I could just speak for my household. We're a large family, and so ain't nobody got no time for that. Personally, I don't think that culture has anything to do with us cooking, serving food in aluminum foil pans. There's no cultural differences with regard to that, because it has nothing to do with culture. You can send your questions over to melaninva, that's MELANINVA @gmail.com, and ask Trey.